Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to unpack one of the absolute most fascinating and, frankly, complex geopolitical puzzles of our time: India's response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. When Russian tanks first rolled across the border, capitals all over the West, Washington, London, Brussels, they were expecting immediate, full-throated condemnation from the world's largest democracy. After all, India has become a really vital strategic partner to the West. But instead, they were met with a very calculated silence. Now, geopolitics is rarely about simple moral choices, right? It's about history, it's about geography, and ultimately, it's about state survival. So today, we're going to look way past those sensational daily headlines. We're going to examine the deep theoretical frameworks and the very hard material realities that actually drive New Delhi's behavior on the global stage. Here is our agenda for today. 1. India's Ukraine war dilemma. 2. The multi-alignment doctrine. 3. The Russian arms dependency. 4. Balancing the China threat. 5. The advocate's perspective. And 6. Stretching strategic autonomy.
Section 1. India's Ukraine war dilemma. To really grasp India's overarching strategy, we have to first look at exactly what actions New Delhi has taken and conspicuously avoided taking since this conflict began. So, since the outbreak of the war, the Modi government has maintained a strictly neutral stance globally. But what does that actually mean in practice? Well, it means India consistently abstains at the UN on resolutions condemning Russia for violating Ukraine's sovereignty. Now, to be fair, Indian diplomats frequently emphasize the UN Charter, international law, and the urgent need for a return to diplomacy, but they explicitly stop short of publicly criticizing Moscow. On top of that, India has completely rejected the financial sanctions regime imposed by the US and its allies. Actually, defying immense Western pressure, India went the other way. They've significantly increased their purchases of discounted Russian crude oil, effectively turning a massive global energy crisis into a huge economic opportunity. Now, you might be wondering, why take that risk? Well, what's truly inescapable here is the gravity of India's energy needs. Look at this breakdown. India imports over 80% of its domestic oil consumption. 80%! For a rapidly industrializing, developing nation of over 1.4 billion people, massive spikes in global energy prices aren't just some political headache. They literally translate to crippling domestic food inflation, industrial slowdowns, and severe, everyday economic hardship for millions. So the Indian government rigorously justifies buying this discounted Russian oil not as some geopolitical endorsement of the war, absolutely not, but as a non-negotiable necessity for its own energy security and the daily welfare of its citizens.
Section 2. The multi-alignment doctrine. So how does India rationalize standing right in the middle, caught between the West and Russia? To get this, we need to step back from the immediate crisis and define the core theoretical framework of India's foreign policy. This brings us to a specialist term you're going to hear a lot in international relations today: multi-alignment. Now, don't confuse this with the old Cold War concept of non-alignment. Non-alignment was basically about keeping a safe distance from major power blocks, avoiding entanglement. Multi-alignment, it's totally different. It is an energetic, proactive strategy of engaging multiple players to maximize national interests without relying on or becoming subservient to any single major power. It's about vigorously engaging with all sides simultaneously. The whole goal is to extract the absolute best possible economic, tech, and security benefits from everyone without ever getting tied down to one superpower.
And the ultimate prize of this multi-alignment strategy? It's this second crucial concept right here: strategic autonomy. Think of this as the fiercely guarded ability of a state to maintain completely independent decision-making and avoid binding military alliances that might restrict its foreign policy down the road. In a world full of shifting alliances, autonomy is basically the ultimate currency for a rising power. By avoiding formal binding treaties like, say, NATO's Article 5, India ensures that its foreign policy choices are never subordinated to the demands or the conflicts of a treaty partner. In our increasingly multipolar world, strategic autonomy is exactly how India plans to navigate its rise to becoming a leading global power on its own distinct terms.
What this doctrine looks like in practice is a behavior academics call normative hedging. Basically, it means India absolutely refuses to commit exclusively to the agendas of either the West or the non-West. It's what allows New Delhi to sit in strategic security dialogues like the Quad, partnering with the US, Japan, and Australia to counter maritime threats, while simultaneously holding joint military land exercises with Russia and keeping a seat in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization right alongside Beijing and Moscow. It is a highly complex, pragmatic dance, constantly shifting weight to maintain perfect balance.
Section 3. The Russian arms dependency. Now here's the crucial point.
High-minded theories of autonomy are ultimately constrained by hard, unforgiving material realities. And the most inescapable reality for India is where its military hardware comes from. Check out this staggering figure. It's estimated that between 60 to 85% of India's entire defense inventory currently consists of Russian or Soviet-origin military equipment. 60 to 85%. Imagine trying to replace that much hardware overnight. You literally cannot pivot a military apparatus of that immense scale. We're talking entire tank fleets, fighter squadrons, layered air defense networks without decades of sustained effort. Trying to abruptly sever that supply chain, it would ground the Indian Air Force and leave the nation dangerously, unacceptably vulnerable.
And listen, this didn't just happen by accident, right? It's a deeply entrenched path dependency that traces all the way back to Cold War geopolitics. Back in the 1960s, while the US was actively arming Pakistan, India turned to the Soviet Union. This led to the first MiG-21 supplies when Western nations simply refused to sell to them. Fast forward to 1971, the Indo-Soviet Treaty of Peace and Friendship provided vital strategic cover for India during the Bangladesh Liberation War against huge US and Chinese pressure. By the time we hit 1988, the Soviets actually leased a nuclear-powered submarine to India. That was an unprecedented transfer of strategic tech. And today, this deep-rooted relationship has evolved into the joint development of advanced weapons like the supersonic BrahMos cruise missiles. So Russia is deeply trusted in New Delhi for highly specific historical reasons that go way beyond standard arms sales. Over the decades, Moscow has repeatedly used its historic UN Security Council vetoes to protect India on highly sensitive issues, particularly regarding Kashmir. Plus, their willingness to share that advanced nuclear submarine tech, that demonstrated a level of trust that no other nation, including the United States, has historically been willing to extend to New Delhi. To Indian strategists, Russia isn't just some vendor you buy rifles from. It's a crucial, long-term counterweight to U.S. hegemony, ensuring India can actually maintain that vital strategic autonomy we talked about earlier.
Section 4. Balancing the China Threat. But of course, this precarious global balancing act is severely complicated by a very real, very present security dilemma right on India's doorstep. This perfectly illustrates the geopolitical trap India finds itself in today. Let's break it down. On one side, you have the US-India-China dynamic. Here, India is increasingly leaning on the United States to balance against a rising, assertive China. And the US is more than happy to arm India as a crucial pillar of its Indo-Pacific containment strategy. But contrast that with the dynamic on the other side, Russia, China, Pakistan. Russia, which is now heavily sanctioned and isolated by the West, is leaning heavily on China for economic survival. They're even pivoting toward Pakistan to challenge US influence. Do you see the trap here? India's most trusted historical arms supplier is essentially being forced by global circumstances to move closer to India's two primary adversaries. And the sheer urgency of this threat was crystallized in June 2020. The Galwan Valley clash decisively shifted India's primary security threat away from Pakistan and directly onto China. This was a bloody, hand-to-hand border clash high in the Himalayas, and it fundamentally rewired Indian strategic thinking literally overnight. Following this event, the Indian military actively and massively reconfigured its deployments. They took specialized divisions away from the traditional western border with Pakistan and repositioned them all the way up into the icy heights of Ladakh, explicitly to face down the Chinese military machine. Consequently, India's shifting Indo-Pacific vision has hardened significantly. Before Galwan, India promoted a pretty inclusive maritime strategy that tried to accommodate China's rise peacefully. But post-Galwan, New Delhi took a much more muscular approach. They started explicitly declaring the South China Sea as global commons. They poured a ton of energy into reactivating the Quad with the US, Japan, and Australia. They began heavily enhancing naval interoperability with Western forces, joining in these massive, complex joint maneuvers. And domestically, they've actively initiated policies aimed at slashing their critical economic dependence on Beijing.
Section 5. The Advocate's Perspective.
So we've examined the theory, and we've examined the hard material reality, but how does the Indian state actually communicate this rather controversial stance to the watching world? Take a look at this quote from S. Jaishankar, India's serving external affairs minister, and really a central architect of this exact policy. He states, putting India first may be another way of capturing a strong and pragmatic policy outlook. India is really seeking strategic convergence rather than tactical convenience. I want to pause on that phrase, strategic convergence. In this official government framing, multi-alignment is completely divorced from the idea of mere opportunism or, cowardly fence-sitting. Instead, Jaishankar is presenting it as a highly principled, confident, unapologetic nationalist pragmatism. It's a strategy where India is playing on the front foot to secure its own inevitable rise. But as analysts, we have to cross-examine that optimistic view. Look at the stark contrast here between the advocate and the analyst. Where the advocate, like Jaishankar, sees a masterful game of maximizing options, playing on the front foot, and employing necessary pragmatism, the academic analyst sees a strategy that is inherently opportunistic and fraught with profound peril. Analysts warn that this stance leaves India incredibly exposed. Think about it. If the grind of the Ukraine war forces Russia into a permanently tightened axis with China, well, India's vital defense supply chain is essentially held hostage by Beijing's goodwill, all while India risks severely alienating its most important future partners in Washington and Europe. As university students studying geopolitics, your job is to always recognize the difference between a state's internal justification of its policy and the external warnings of its inherent vulnerabilities. A serving minister's text is, by definition, an advocate statement. It is carefully designed to project strength, purpose, and control to domestic voters and foreign adversaries alike. We must always weigh those confident internal justifications against the harsh, unforgiving external warnings of structural geopolitical vulnerability.
Section 6. Stretching Strategic Autonomy.
Which brings us to the ultimate nightmare scenario for New Delhi. Remember, just weeks before the invasion of Ukraine, Russia and China declared a no-limits partnership. As the war drags on and Western sanctions severely and permanently weaken Moscow's economy and conventional military capabilities, that partnership becomes incredibly lopsided. This no-limits partnership threatens to make a sanctioned, weakened Moscow the junior partner to Beijing. For India, relying on a fellow superpower for weapons is one thing, but relying on a vassal state of your primary adversary, that is a strategic disaster of the highest order. Because of this shifting power dynamic, we can clearly map out exactly where the doctrine might snap. Consider these severe friction points. What happens if Russia is pressured by Beijing to cut off vital military spare parts to India during a future Sino-Indian border war? What if the U.S. finally loses its geopolitical patience and decides to heavily sanction India over its purchase of Russian S-400 missile systems? What if a desperate, cash-strapped Russia begins vastly expanding its advanced arms sales to Pakistan just to secure funding and appease Chinese demands? Or, perhaps most terrifyingly of all, what if India is forced to choose sides in a global hot conflict over Taiwan, completely obliterating any remaining diplomatic middle ground? Which leaves us with this final, really profound question to consider today. How far can multi-alignment stretch before a tightened Russia-China alliance or overwhelming Western pressure finally snaps India's strategic autonomy? Can a rising power truly remain a friend to all and navigate a middle path in an increasingly fractured and polarized world? Or will the cold, hard material realities of defense supply chains and border geography eventually force a definitive, irreversible choice? I want you to think deeply about that as you review today's material. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive, and I will see you in the next explainer.